gentlemen, the Warbosses of Da ApORKalypse.
Hey guys, and welcome to the Warbosses of Da ApORKalypse. It is hello from myself, 6+ Stevo. I am joined by these three ugly gits. First, we've got from Plastic Crack Gaming, Mr. Skarner.
Hell yes! What's the crack?
We've got Mr. Dreadwire Gaming in the house. I should have saved you for last, shouldn't I?
Yeah,
and we've got the Hobby Git, aka...
We've peaked too early. Hello.
Never.
You've been enjoying some technical difficulties, haven't you, mate?
Yeah. And we'll just say yes before I just go Hulk and just rip this Empire Studio to bits.
I think we could have got an impressive wire out of you today, actually.
Yeah. Go for it.
No.
No.
You can tell he's gone beyond that point.
Yeah, don't poke the bear. Don't poke the bear. But yeah, we're on episode 2. Last episode. What did we talk about last episode? What did we talk about?
How we got into the hobby and how we got into orcs. Yeah.
Bingo. Cool. So yeah, it's quite nicely segueing into this episode where we're going to be talking about the orc clans and everything about them, and kind of we'll probably talk a little bit about how we got into our respective clans, and yeah, go from there. But I think we kind of probably want to talk before we start talking about the individual clans and talking about each of them respectively. We probably want to talk about sort of what is a clan, don't we? And the differences between a clan and a tribe and a war.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think some of you guys might have something to say on this. I'm looking at you, Hobby Git, and you, Dread.
No.
What would a freebooter know about clans?
We knew this would be the episode I'd get it in, didn't we?
Yeah. He says, "Oh, I'm too good for a clan." He was kicked out of the clan. That's what it was.
It's easy to see why, isn't it?
So yeah, Dim. So yeah, I don't know if you explain to us and the viewers, some of which you may
tell
be
us,
fairly
Tim.
new.
Enlighten us.
What is a clan?
A tribe? What is a tribe? Yeah.
Well, a tribe. The tribe's the easiest, isn't it? Because it's a group of orcs, and a clan is an ideology that brings some orcs together, and maybe all the orcs, or maybe just some of them. So a clan will form around a collective group of ideas that certain orcs will adopt, and then, we'll try and not to get too ahead of things straight away, but you will have
like heavy metal or hip hop.
Some that are more likely, to be adopted than others.
Yeah,
I think that's probably the first sort of misconception we should really get out of the way. There isn't just 6.
No,
there's loads. But in terms of the principal lore, there are 6 really well-known ones.
Yeah, 6 primary sort of clans, isn't there? Like that, like you say, and it's even written like that in a lot of the codexes and things, isn't it? I don't know if I'm pretty sure it's written like that in the most recent one, that there are the 6 most well-known clans, but there are other clans out there at work and everything. Which, like the Space Marine chapters, it's got a way of giving players a chance to create their own clan and identity and stuff, and it.
Yeah. Well, we're not as bound as Space Marines either, because although they've got their own special rules and stuff each chapter, that then they can't mix and match, and we can, because the clans are not a fixed thing that you have to pick an army out of. So you can have a tribe that's mixed by many different clans.
And in the lore, most tribes are a mixture of various clans, aren't they? And
yeah.
That does depend on the edition. That's kind of the one thing that does change, is that when you get in the game, that an orc army will be comprised of what I like to call units with hats. So when the idea is that a clan is represented by a unit rather than an army, you'll hear an awful lot more talk of the multi-clan being the norm, and then when you get to a kind of point where your entire army is probably one clan, it's more likely that they'll mention at least the monoclan thing, or get a mention. And it's gone back and forth. I remember back in my forum days getting into a number of arguments about whether or not the monoclan wars can even exist. So it's often a debating point as to whether or not monoclans are a thing that can sustain indefinitely.
You're definitely right there, because like I was looking through me, second ed codex has, like you say, units. You've got units specific to certain clans, like a Snakebite boys mob, a Bad Moons boys mob, a Freebooter pirates mob, etc. So the codexes were written very differently back then, weren't they? And it's almost like the lore is sort of tweaked, changed slightly to match the sort of the rules of the current game.
Yeah, but then you've got, I think that where you've got that change and it does that to fit with what they're trying to sell or what they're trying to do in game at the time, you've got like convenience lore. That's what that is. It's convenience lore. But then you've got like core lore, as I think of it, like what is more sort of canon lore. And I much prefer the idea of, there being orc tribes and, they're, whole planet-sized tribes a lot of the time. There would be a whole planet is actually a tribe, and that tribe could even cross over to another planet and take over.
Even a whole system,
and belong to a tribe. But they could be overthrown by another, and then they, merge into that. So they can be so, not just multi-clan, but also multi-tribe even. And I like that. It fits for orcs rather than, just having a Bad Moons planet crop up, just don't make sense.
I think I like the freedom to have the mix of both. I like the freedom. I think that's the best. That's the best for everyone, because it's cool to have represent.
It's better when they don't define it so much. Yeah.
Yeah, it's you could have your army with a mixture of all sorts and look like they've swallowed up loads of clans and tribes, etc. and everything, and that's really cool and very fluffy. But I like that the lore allows that you can have a specialized tribe and stuff, and I think again I don't see anything necessarily unorky about that either. Like you say, that they'll naturally get on, especially if there's no one else around to war with. The different type of clans are likely to find friction against each other.
Oh yeah, they fall out with each other because it's like, yeah, exactly. It's like we were saying,
cultural differences.
Yeah, it's like different cultures. So like people that are really into walking in the forest and stuff like that have a problem with people who are really into dirt track motorbiking through the forest, don't they? It's like they have a clash. It's but they're at the end of the day they're just people at the same time. So like they might see each other down the burger bar and just say hello.
I think it's interesting though, depending on who you ask, what's their idea of clans and orc lore and clan identity is in general, because it's changed so much over the years. Like you were saying, Stevo, if you look at like the first to second edition, like there was clans and families of orcs. Like they'd live in families in like sort of households, sort of their little fortress villages. That changed. And then if you ask someone who like started in 3rd edition, they're sort of even the concept of what the orc faction is has changed over the years. It seems to be more mutable than a lot of the other concepts that Games Workshop have. Like for instance, Space Marines. What Space Marines are is hammered out like repetitively. You could tell like some of the Space Marine chapters, they've written so much about them. You could probably tell what they've had for breakfast like 2 bleeding years ago. This thing, you know what I mean? Whereas with the orc stuff, I think it depends who was in the studio at the time, because there's not as much written about them. Different people will have different concepts of what the orcs are. So like there would have been the old school guys, 1st and 2nd edition, then Andy Chambers and that group, sort of that generation, put their own stamp on what orcs are. So we had like Gorka Morka would have been sort of influential on the 3rd edition. 2nd to 3rd edition was a big change. We had that period, changed a little bit in 4th, but it was still kind of, rough concept of what the orcs are was still kind of the same as the rise, and then now we have sort of, it's like a new generation again who are sort of, I don't know, it's like they sort of
it depends
back
depends
at some
where
bits.
you came into the
Yeah,
game,
yeah.
doesn't it? Almost, and what your
It does.
feelings of it
That's
are.
what I mean. That's why it's always an interesting conversation. If you ask an orc player about, you know, clans, orc identity, the orc faction, it really depends on when that person started in the hobby as to what orcs are for that hobbyist. It's like, it's just sort of the interesting dynamic of the faction.
I think there's a lot of newer players that confuse the clan and tribe thing. They almost think that a clan equals tribe, and that's like Dim said at the beginning. That's not really what a clan is. It's like a personality trait. It's like it's bred into them. It's almost like it's designed. Like it's sort of. And when all the clans are together, it's almost like when the orcs are at their strongest, because they all kind of represent a certain different part of the society almost. The way to sort of keep it running, and like the Bad Moons, sort of like, they always talk about them being like the almost like the merchant class, and things like that. Like they all represent a sort of a niche and a need within the greater sort of whole. But yeah, clans, tribes, very different. What about a war? Who can eloquently put what a war
is? It is a collective noun of tribes.
There you go. It's almost like a what's the word I'm looking for? Like a religious, like a yeah.
Or
yeah.
The J word was used back in the old books before that became taboo.
Jervis.
Yeah.
It's better than the M word, I suppose. But moving on. Yeah. So we've got it. Yeah, that's the kind of the talk of clans, tribes, wars. But where should we? If we want to start talking about the clans, which clans should we discuss first?
Well, we should probably name them all first. We can't name them all, but
what's that he's got there? Look at that fella. Look, what's he drinking from?
This 6+ Stevo coffee.
Oh, look at him! Show off.
It's quite special, yeah. But look, listen, I'm glad you brought that up, Dread. I'm glad you brought that up, because I've got 3 other mugs sat right here, actually.
Oh yeah.
I've got this nice one.
I resent that remark.
That's a gorgeous mug. What a pretty mug.
I've also got another one here. Look.
A mug only a mother could love.
There you go.
Hey, there you go. Look at him. He's a grumpy bollocks just like me. I love it.
That's an ugly mug.
It's mirrored, so it does spell your names.
And look, Dim, grumpy. Here we go.
There's one to cheer you up, mate. There you go.
Oh, Jesus. Misery personified. I love
there
it.
You go.
Just say miserable git instead of the hobby git.
Dim, I wish you were still called Dim, because you have to pay per letter on these bastards, I tell you. So. But yes, guys, they will be winging their way out to you shortly. I wanted to save them for the episode. But never mind you talking about my mugs anyway, Dred. I see you're sporting quite a nice T-shirt there, mate.
I wasn't just stripping for the audience, don't worry.
It's like a car crash in slow motion. It's like you don't want to look, but you just can't, can't.
So we've got the Dread Wargaming T-shirt, but I didn't want to leave you boys out either. I did get you boys one too. So yeah, look, I did the same thing as you, Stevo. I don't know if you're going to be able to. I'll have to see the camera how it looks. Got one here for Mr. Hobby Git.
If I fit in it.
Dim. Yeah, I've even put Dim at the top.
Yeah. Nice.
And for Scar, because he is a commando Git,
Blood axe.
Yeah.
He's got it on camo. The sneaky Git.
But where is Scarnier's shirt? That's the question.
Well, it had to be camo or purple, didn't it?
And then Mr. Stevo.
The Emperor's new clothes.
Boom!
Jesus, my eyes are bleeding.
Well, you choose to paint your army yellow, didn't you, mate? There you go. You can wear that.
Thank you very much.
Wear it with pride, Stevo. Wear it with pride, my friend. I'm sure you will. I know you will. Just to show your pride in the bad moons.
We may have talked about these. Me and Dredd may have talked about these mugs and T-shirts a little bit earlier, and may have revealed them to each other a bit earlier.
What are you on about? That was totally natural.
I have requested a reprint of mine to have it in not yellow.
Bad me on it doesn't like yellow.
Right.
It really is.
Viewers, in the comments, please tell Stevo what a baby he is for crying about wearing a yellow shirt when he paints all of his orcs in yellow shirts. Like, what a hypocrite, eh? Eh?
Thanks, mate. There's going to be so many comments now.
Yeah, I'm sure there will be. I hope there will be. I hope everyone's going to give you a hard time.
But there you go, guys. So we're all next episode 3. Hopefully, if they get posted in time with the post service the way it is at the moment. But all of us will be wearing our T-shirts, sipping from our mugs, looking like we've been kicked through a Orc Warboss merchandise store.
Well, yeah.
But
Indeed.
yes, there you go. But anyway, I'm sorry, Dim. Before we rudely interrupted you to show off the merchandise, you were talking.
Merch, baby, merch. Bling, bling.
Oh, there's a pun there, but it's not coming.
Oh, and link into my channel, guys, because I've got a giveaway at the moment where you can win one of these as well, and a cool truck. So, but yeah,
that's forward thinking, wasn't it? Eh? Whoa.
I know what you were saying, Dim. You were saying we need to discuss which clans. We're going to list the clans.
Oh, yeah, that was the thing. Yeah.
Before it was segued to hell and back. All right.
Yeah,
oh, yeah, now I remember. So long ago. No. How long does it take?
Going back now, then. Go on.
I'll get you started, mate. Bad Moons.
Are you sure they're a clan?
Fuck off.
And then
they've been there from the start, haven't they?
Yeah, we've got Goffs, Death Skulls, Snakebites, Evil Sons. This is where I start to lose track of what I've already said. Blood Axes, and then
Goffs.
I don't know.
Well, that's it, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's it. 6
Death
clans.
Skulls.
Yeah, Death Skulls, Goffs, Snakebite.
Did that list brilliantly.
Yeah.
I should have written it down.
6 clans. That's it. That's the 6 clans. That's the 6 clans we're going to be covering today, guys. Nothing more, nothing less. So let's get into it. No, we should talk about there are others as well, isn't there? There is also
the elephant in the realm, or should I say the gargantuan squiggot in the realm?
No, you're right. You're right,
Rebels.
Scar. You're right. Grot Rebels. Yeah.
Grot Rebels.
Look,
I'm sure there's something else.
Being a clan in themselves, you know.
I'm sure there's something else. I'm sure there's something else we haven't mentioned yet.
Can't think of nothing.
Can't think what it is though. Yeah.
Can't think of nothing.
Well, if Grot Rebels are classed as a clan, they are rebels, right? They're clanless, aren't they? They're without a clan, so they're basically freebooter Grots, aren't they?
Yeah, because that's what freebooters basically means. It's a free booter, so it's someone who moves freely. That's more or less what it means.
But yeah, well, we might as well talk about freebooters first, then, don't we?
Go on, then.
Well, I don't really have a lot to say on them.
Well, it is the lack of being in
the problem is that freebooters is probably the most are probably the most diverse, because you've got quite a lot of very varied stuff that includes stuff that some people might argue whether or not are still around or not, but I would say that it still all fits. So you've got your Chaos Orcs are in there.
I've got a list here.
Commonly Cornet Storm Boys. You've got.
Right, do you want me to reel off the list?
Do it.
They used to do that D100 dice, which is kind of unnecessary.
Are you going to list off a D100 list?
No. That's the thing. There's only
settle in, viewers. Settle in.
There's like 20 options, so it's like, why didn't they just do a D20? Like, it's weird, right? But yeah, the options that you could roll were Freebooter Pirates, Storm Boys of Khorne, Outcast Odd Boys, Renegade Mechaniacs, Renegade Runt Herds, Bad Docs, Flash Gits, Gretchen Bandits, Outcast Retinue, which I don't think that's actually described anywhere else. So I was like, what is the Outcast Retinue? That's a bit odd. Renegade Speed Freaks, Wild Boy Outlaws. That sounds cool as well. Bad Orc Bike Boys. Weird Boy Warp Heads and Mad Boys. That's thrown in together. Dread Mob. Freebooter Minders. Again, that's like human minders, I think. Orc Chaos Renegades.
Dread needs a freebooter minder.
Well, the minders are probably affiliated with the Warphead. They'll probably after they'll be the ones that are looking after various psychers, Orc psychers. That's normally what they do.
Freebooter minders. All right, yeah. Orc Mutants, Possessed Warpheads, Orc Gene Stealer Broods, and Human Mercenaries. So there you go. Like Human Mercenaries is something that sort of like really interested me, because I was like, how about, you know, it was Gorka Morka that brought me in, and I really like the sort of truck thing. So like when I was doing Orcs before, when I first started, I did Death Skulls when I was like first in the hobby in my first stint, and then in my second stint I came in and I wanted to do like Speed Freaks, so I did sort of Evil Sons and I did everything sort of kind of Mad Maxy then, but then this time around I sort of thought, well, having read more about freebooters and it sort of fitting my personality, just, you know, being oddballs and, you know, not fitting in and stuff, like I thought, yeah, I like that, that's more me,
being a contrary bollocks.
Yeah.
Can't imagine for 1 second why that appealed to you, Dread.
No.
Can't imagine why, in a very similar but different way, Rebel Grots appealed to me.
Yeah, we've all reflected our personalities, I think, in the end with what we've chosen. But yeah, like I think, you know, just thinking, well, I could do sort of diggers, but you know, like Gorka Morka diggers sort of thing, where I could have like some human tribes on the planet that orcs have pretty much dominated. And they're like freebooters, so they're trading, and you know, some of these human tribes literally want to do some trading too, you know, so like some of them will even dress up like orcs and stuff and wear like masks and stuff,
paint themselves green and
yeah, and all that sort of stuff. So I thought, yeah, I like that idea, you know, and you always end up with a few human sculpts anyway, don't you, when you're playing 40k as orcs. You still manage to pick up human bits and bobs like from box sets and that, so yeah,
players we end up with kits from all sorts of factions.
Yeah,
we?
Exactly. Yeah, you get a few Dean Stealers when you buy one of their vehicles or whatever, you know.
Yeah,
so. Dean Stealer cults even, sorry.
But yeah, freebooters. So they're basically they're all sorts, aren't they? They can be, like you say, they can be outcasts from other tribes and clans, things that have been kicked out of tribes, things that have had sort of visions of grandeur and thought they're too good for the tribe they're in and gone off on their own, and you know, yeah, and like Dim said, like some of them are pirates, not all of them. So and yeah, they can be virtually anything, can't they? As your list just represented.
Yeah.
All orc pirates are freebooters, not all freebooters are pirates. It's the mnemonic that I tend to.
And there's some interesting scope as well for people that are interested in, like, you know, like mutants and, you know, chaos mutated orcs and stuff like that, you know, to play as freebooters.
Well, yeah, because it gives you huge freedom, doesn't it, in terms of writing lore for your faction? Because there could be any kind of reason why they're freebooters, couldn't there? Like you say, mutations, whatever. Because anything considered unorky is either killed or turfed out pretty swift. Like Gene Stealer cult things are very rare in orcs because orcs generally sniff it out pretty quick and turf them out, unlike the Umis. And like I say, chaos orcs and things, which are a thing, rare, but they are a thing. Rarer than it is with like humans and other races.
Yeah, I mean they are kind of the kind of easy excuse, I suppose, for anything that don't kind of fit. You can just go, well, it's a freebooter then.
Well, this is the thing with freebooters. There's as many reasons for having different freebooters as there are different freebooters. You know what I mean? So it could be like Flash gets in a bad moon tribe that got too uppity and got kicked out by the boss, or, you know, were too greedy and, you know, ended up going out. You could have like Blood Axe commandos that are mercenaries that hired themselves out and split off from their warband, or
Yeah, it got so good that they was winning every battle and for their tribe.
Or they're so well hidden, their Warboss just couldn't find them anymore. So they ended up doing their own thing. You know what I mean? You could run with the idea of a freebooter unit and do your own thing with it. But I think the thing that I'd like to hit home is freebooters does not just equal space pirate orcs, which seems to be what is coming out from the GW studio, the perception, which in my personal opinion is very lazy.
I think, do you know what? I think even more so from third-party companies, actually. I know Dred's touched on it before. A lot of the third-party companies are going super heavy on the pirate theme, which is cool if it's your thing. I mean, I'm very much share the same feelings as Dred, whereas a little bit of that, little hints of it here and there is nice, but when they go the full hog and they're literally got like ship wheels and stuff and things hanging off them and tentacles and barnacles and stuff, I'm like, where would they have got that stuff? Like, and why would orcs in the 41st fucking millennium have any reference to old school seafaring pirates? Like, they can be pirates without having to look like what we think of as a pirate. It's not Pirates of the Caribbean pirates. It's more like hardcore, like they'll cut you fucking up if you don't hand over the shit. But
I mean, basically, like
that's
all
what I'm going for.
Are kind of unified by this whole idea of it's kind of like neutrality and the pursuit of wealth and accumulation of things that orcs generally aren't against getting. They're just against what you need that in order to fight. Like like a lot of what sort of drives regular orc society is the idea that if there's a scrap happening, they just want to join in, and the rewards are a bonus, not a necessity or an impediment to do it. And I think that's one of the things that orcs particularly dislike about freebooters is that they tend to produce
and death skulls
who work for pay, which orcs will grudgingly accept when they need the guns and they need the fighters.
I think it also suggests...
Sorry, a speed wire just went past my window then. I don't know if you picked that up on the microphones.
I think it also suggests that the freebooters might be a bit long in the tooth. So there might be orcs that are a bit older, and so they're not regenerating their teeth quite as much, perhaps, and they're looking for more means to get more teeth, and they've already started to have a lust for staying alive at that stage because they've seen quite a few battles and they like having that fun, but, beyond being like one of the young lads that's like, witness me, like with strapping a rocket to their back, these lads are not doing that so much. Like, I don't suppose you get you will get them, of course, but you wouldn't get like freebooter pirate storm boys. Like, you might get a bunch of storm boys that are freebooters and are hiring themselves out, but you wouldn't necessarily get like the pirates doing that. I shouldn't think they'd be like long in the tooth old. Like, old flash gits from a Bad Moon tribe, a lot of them,
Yeah, I think a lot of the piratical ones that are out there for the loot are most likely are coming from Bad Moons and Death Skulls, aren't they?
Death Skulls
who
and
value wealth and loot above all else. And you've probably got like a lot that have originated from Blood Axes who tend to hire themselves out as mercenaries and whatnot. And I
think some clans would have a problem though. I think maybe Goths wouldn't do so well as freebooters really so much.
I don't know. I mean, Goths are getting sick and tired of their current situation and joining a freebooter mob who is off exploring the galaxy and getting into all kinds of scraps. Goths would be like, yeah, I'm up for the ride. Take me along. Well, anywhere I can.
They wouldn't do so well with others, though. You know what I mean?
No, well, Goths are a moody bunch, aren't they?
They're all opportunistic. Like, all orcs are opportunistic. Yeah. So, like I said, you could come up for any reason for pretty much anything to be freebooter for.
It's a great thing about them, isn't it? That we've got so much freedom, almost like you were saying earlier, Scar, like how there's a lot less written about orcs. Certainly from an orc perspective in the lore, it's usually written from the other side, but because there's less written, we've got so much more freedom to sort of create our own lore, and it's so much more freedom within within the clans themselves and the tribes and that, there's not really any strict path for orcs. They're not like other factions, which are...
That's why we grit our teeth every time they come out with something new, and it's like, oh, they're gonna, oh, please don't,
they're gonna
corner us,
tighten the
don't corner us.
But yeah, I think we've probably, since this is supposed to be about clans, we've spent like most of the episode talking about something that's not a clan. So
go on then.
Should we stick to that and carry on with rebel Grot mobs?
Nah, it's all right.
Should we hold on to that till last then?
No, I'll take over my own. I'll take over episode on my own and just, leave it.
They'll probably, okay.
If we talk about Grot Rebels,
Let's talk about the other outcasts. The Blood Axes.
Yeah, well, that's why it's part of the reason why I like the Blood Axes. They were supposed to be the natural leaders of the orcs, but the rest of them sort of overthrew them because they see Blood Axes as scumbags because they use tactics and leadership, and the other clans were like, tactical withdrawals, what are you talking about? So yeah, and the fact that Blood Axes tend to be hired out as mercenaries, they've no problems with doing that. So other orc clans see them as treacherous scumbags, and what's not
also,
the love?
Thinking so low as to hire human mercenaries.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, they'll hire human mercenaries as well.
So the other orcs look at them, don't they, as being very un-orky, as in like what you want to hide from the enemy,
Exactly.
like
surprise attacks,
cowardly, like that's like what's that all about?
Discuss things. What do you want to discuss?
But what they don't realise is
what
they don't realise is that the Blood Axes are actually deep down just like every other orc. They just love a good scrap, and they're just as likely to turn on the people that hired them. And usually they end up doing that quite a lot, don't they? Once the battle's done and
like all orcs are opportunistic. So if the opportunity arises that they could overthrow their employer, of course they will. You know what I mean?
Sneaky gits.
Exactly. But that's what
only getting close so you can find your weaknesses.
Yeah, pretty much. That's what if we're going to be talking about the clans and then talking about why we individually picked them. I went for Blood Axes for a couple of reasons. I like camouflage. I thought different types of camouflage on units was cool. I like the idea that Blood Axes will loot Imperial vehicles, keep them the original colours, and use them to attack the enemy and confuse the fuck out of them. Commandos are cool. And then there were the orcs that use tactics and stuff like that. And I really hated the Imperial propaganda memes where it's like orcs are stupid and don't know how to think. And I'm like, Blood Axes really fly in the face of that. And I'm like, win-win for me.
There's not much more scary to any opponent, is there, who comes up against a Blood Axe mob and is outsmarted by them, because you already know, like, brute force, you're severely lacking. Numbers, you're severely lacking, but you've always got the tactics and the outsmarting, these stupid, dumb brutes, and then suddenly they're flanking you and ambushing you and striking from rear and doing all this stuff and sabotaging and using your own shit against you. It's suddenly like, there's not much more scary than that, is there? God, I'm sounding like a Blood Axe fanboy here.
You're all are deep down, but just won't admit it. Let's be honest. Let's be fair.
The thing is, mate, I'm just a fanboy of orcs. We all give each other banter and stuff, and it's part of the fun of it, the rivalry between the different clans and stuff. But it's they've all got something cool to offer, haven't they? And they all
they all do. Yeah, they all have
focus in on a specialisation or a certain aspect of the orcs.
Like a tube of Smarties, like they're all actually well nice.
Orange ones are the best.
They are the best ones. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, it's because they've got orange oil in them. That's why.
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
Orange oil.
Reel it back in, lads. Reel it in.
On topic.
Next clan.
Chocolate's always my thing. Like I'm always eating chocolate.
Next clan is Bad Moons. Bad Moons. I've been dying.
Me next. He said me.
I'm just going to go for a week.
They've from day one were always my favourite. Instantly, I was drawn to them. Anyone that knows me knows I'm into my hip hop and stuff. I grew up watching like the old hood type movies of like Boys in the Hood and Menace to Society, and I was sold on it. I was drawn in as a young teenager, thinking, this is the coolest thing in the world. We driving around in lowriders, like I was like totally taken in with the image and everything, and it hasn't left me. And Bad Moons, just for me, they represent that. It's all about the showing off, the image, the look, the bling.
The boys in the hood.
Making it big, getting all the money, and just, and I've just drawn to that. And I kind of saw them as almost as like an elite faction, because they've got all the best gear, and they're not just orcs, they're orcs with the best guns, the best armor, the best weapons, and the best gear. And the reason they got that is well known to most people, but some people might not realize that Bad Moons grow their teeth quicker than other orcs, and teeth is orc currency. So Bad Moons are just naturally wealthier. It's always
the only way they end up wealthier either. They have a particular tendency towards a particular squig.
Them hip-hop fiends are well endowed.
Which, if I remember rightly, are called flesh eaters. But their teeth are worryingly close to what orc teeth are like. So they can be harvested. Usually by sending a Grot to go and do the harvesting the teeth, which I really love doing.
So draw lots for that job.
Yeah. So, like,
which everyone gets flung at it.
Bad Moons are known to use flesh eaters to get more money. And what probably happened is that the squig, like the Bad Moons were probably like a long time ago, some Bad Moon clan tribe figured out that the flesh eater squig was useful for this and used it and used the teeth, and nobody noticed and thought, oh, how come Bad Moons are richer than us? And probably thought, oh, their teeth probably grow faster.
Mm-hmm.
And because of the way that resonance works, and we will probably have to do an episode on this at some point, that became a reality through resonance. That's probably why Bad Moon's teeth grow faster, is because initially they used to cheat. And at this point, they probably don't even need to. But yeah, their teeth do indeed grow faster.
I love that. That's that's brilliant. I've never even considered thinking of it in that way, but that's.
Oh, I've got more of
cool.
this.
That's cool. Let's put a whole new twist on it. That's really cool. And yeah, you're right, mate. We do have to definitely do an episode on the whole resonance.
Oh, tell me about it. Oh,
that's for sure. That one's coming up, because there's a lot of not misinformation, but misunderstanding of that, I think. But we're getting off topic again.
Yeah.
I want to carry on waxing lyrical about Bad Moons. But yeah, cheers. That was really cool. That's a whole different way of thinking on that. But there's just like how you want to clear up that all freebooters aren't pirates necessarily. I want to clear up that there's also a bit of a misconception. Certainly, I think this anyway, is that almost Bad Moons are in some way inherently weaker than other orc clans, which is I think it all stems. Then, there's this line on the bit where it says about how they grow their teeth quicker. And now it says, which isn't a problem to any other orc, because if they want the teeth, they can punch them out of a Bad Moon's gobs and get their fill of teeth and everything. And I think almost that little line has been taken. And also, a lot of people think of Bad Moons as a shooty army, and they are. Bad Moons do love their guns now, but they love to scrap just like every other orc. They love a good fight. And a Bad Moon doesn't necessarily just have the best shooter. He'll have the best power claw, or the best suit of mega armor, or, a big, shiny big chopper that's better than anyone else's, or whatever it be. But yeah, they do naturally kind of go towards the Daka. But yeah, that's what I just love about them. I love the thought of these orcs that are just in the typical.
It's the small man fast car syndrome, isn't it?
Just remember, it's not compensating when you don't need one.
But yeah, I just love them. I think they're awesome. I like the color schemes and everything as well.
You don't like wearing it though.
No. And in my defence, my Bad Moons aren't painted full on Tonka truck yellow. Like a lot of them are. There's little bits of yellow in the army.
Sounds like he's making excuses now.
Understated, because I still like the rusted look on my stuff. But yeah,
and he plays Black and Yellow as his tune, and it like
Black and Yellow, Black and Yellow.
Has he even seen the video?
Leave that till the end. I've got a point that brushes on that. We'll talk about that after we've gone through all the different ones. Who are we doing next?
Deaf Skulls?
Skulls?
Yeah.
I didn't even have much chance there. I was trying to wax lyrical, and I just said the whole thing about
if we
bad
let you
moons,
talk about bad moons, we'd be here
everyone
next
just taking the piss out of me.
So yeah.
God, the wind's really blowing outside here. Oh.
Deaf Skulls are the master looters, aren't they? I'll talk a bit about Deaf Skulls because I've not really got an Orc clan, so I'll do Deaf Skulls.
I used to do Deaf Skulls when I was younger, but yeah, go on. I like
Well, if you want to talk about them,
no, you talk about them, mate. I just think they're beautiful.
Well, someone bloody talk
pretty.
about them.
Yeah,
they look pretty, don't they? They're blue. You know what's not to like?
Braveheart
really
styly.
Yeah, face
blue.
paint as well. Yeah,
lucky blue. What's another one of those weird truth and television things of like some archaeologists have found that like one of the paint tints that Celts used to paint themselves blue had like a medicinal effect. It was antiseptic.
Oh.
So like it meant that their wounds didn't get as gnarly as bad. So it actually is protective.
Wow. Cool.
So like, and that is almost orky in a way. Yeah.
Yeah, man.
So Deaf Skulls are kind of really known for two principal things. They're known for having an awful lot of docks, and they're known for like nicking stuff that everybody else belongs to.
Everything.
Very famous.
If they ain't nailed down, they're having it.
Yeah. There's a very famous joke if you want to.
Known for having.
Yeah, well, we'll get to him. Although I would argue that technically, strictly speaking, I would probably say that really, if we're following the Orc law properly and still going with the original definition of freebooter, the Mad Doc Grotsnick is a freebooter at this point. Because he's a bad doc. He's a bad doc. He would have been kicked out of the Deaf Skulls when he decided to put a load of bombs in his Warbosses, a bomb in his Warboss's head and then a bomb in all the knobs' heads.
Well, it does make sense that he's a Deaf Skull. If it was part of like Gazgul's a Goff, so he would have been in a Goff clan, but he was a bad doc at that stage already. You know what I mean? So he must have been. Yeah, he's more freebooter.
I think it's just GW making sure that they've got like a special character for almost every clan. I think that was.
They've done a terrible job of that.
Oh yeah, they have. Yeah.
Not bitter at all.
Where's my fucking characters?
Nas who?
Isn't it weird? For someone without a clan, I've managed to maintain a character for quite some while because of that.
Yeah. But yeah. So Deaf Skulls. Yeah. I nearly. We nearly lost it. But yeah. So like, there's a misconception I want to deal with pretty quickly because when sort of people who talk about outlaw tend to mention that Deaf Skulls have an awful lot of docs, there's almost an instant reaction where people go, surely it's Max. I want to kind of come back to this later on after we've talked about all the different clans, but just because Deaf Skulls have a lot of docs doesn't mean they also don't have a fair amount of mechs. It's just they've got an unusually high amount of docs.
Are they going to need?
It's because they'll loot anything, including flesh.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think they're going to need someone to bang everything together and fix it up after they've nicked it, aren't they?
It also probably explains why orcs like Deaf Skulls particularly invest in the idea of blue being lucky, because there's so many bloody docs around to fleece them out of teeth that they're hoping they never get injured in the first place.
Yeah.
That's probably where that came from. But Deaf Skulls particularly, like, they steal stuff, and it's a common joke amongst orc players of how do you spot stolen property in orc society? Just look for the blue stuff. If it's painted blue, it's probably nicked. One careful owner. But the Deaf Skulls have a little bit more to them than that, but that is more or less what they like to do, is they like to use other technology and other bits and pieces. They're almost kind of like a rival trade clan, really, with the Badmoons. But they like looting a lot, and they also like using Gretchen for it because they have the good sense to realise.
And they're equally mistrusted by the other orcs
all of Orcdom.
as blood axes are. They're quite mistrusted.
Yeah,
and it's talking earlier like a means to an end as well. That they love battling and fighting like any other clan, but they almost are looking forward to after the battle more than anything, or even during the battle. During the battle, they don't usually wait till the end. But yeah, just to get that loot and those rewards and prizes.
There used to be a model actually, Grudnik Wurzag or something like that, with a big old backpack, a load of stuff. Do you remember that one?
Oh,
you know the name, won't you?
Is this the
Prospector model? Yeah, Prospector. Yeah.
He probably wasn't a Death Skull, but we'll get into that in a little while. I've got an argument to make about Gorkamorka and why it doesn't particularly show clans in it. We talk about it later. It's some old Rogue Trader fluff, but I think it'll work quite well for our purposes and probably explain why the situation was the way it was in Gorkamorka.
Death Skulls are massively popular at the moment as well, aren't they? Massively popular.
They've been popular since I think they had their real zenith in the 3rd edition. There was a lot of just Death Skull players when I started up.
On the forum there was
particularly on the forum, and you had people like Scarpia and like quite a number of them. And
his website's still up, and you found that picture.
Yeah, there's a picture of you on there. Yeah. But like, it was a thing of Death Skulls were perfectly placed because when during 3rd ed and actually probably still to this day, like orcs don't get releases very often, so we always have to kind of do our own thing and make our own thing. I think it's part of the reason, and I'll go into this quite a lot, but
when you have looted vehicles, it was good to be a Death Skull.
Yeah. If you say what makes an Ultramarine, like you'll get like a short list of things of what it'll be. If you say what is Orky, a bunch of Orc players will fight all night about what it is. Because there's just so much variety to it, because we've more or less had to fill in the gaps ourselves. And one of the things we did, particularly in the 3rd ed, was we didn't really have any decent vehicles. We had a battle wagon profile, but they didn't give us a battle wagon model until like late 4th ed.
There was a Forge World one. But...
Yeah, Death Skulls gave you an easy way to solve that problem because you looted stuff. And
the rules at the time gave you an easy way to do it as well.
And it was the only time the looted wagon was good. Change my mind.
No. But I always like when there's a looted wagon in the Bleeding Codex, but we'll save that for another day.
Yeah. It's nice that it still gets a mention.
I love it
when you say open play.
Jesus.
What's open play again? All right, it's that thing that nobody does, right?
Don't start them, Jesus.
Apart from GW employees, just so they can say that they do. So that when someone in a store says nobody plays open play, they go, "Oh, I do." Yeah, of course you do, mate.
Check out that video. They did one there. Look, see.
So which clan's next? Snakebites, probably.
Go on. Second best clan.
Or do you want to do Evil Sons? Which?
Do Snakebites. Snakebites.
Well, like the perception I get is I get the feeling that Snakebites tend not to get much love from, in general. Like anytime there's a poll to see which clans people collect, Snakebites are nearly guaranteed to be bottom of the list of clans for some reason, and just perception-wise as well, I think quite a lot of people confuse Snakebites and Feral Orcs. They're not.
Oh God.
Go on, Dim.
Oh, it's so common. It's so damn common.
Yeah. So Feral Orcs and Snakebites aren't the same thing. But go on. You go into detail.
Well, yeah, because we're going to do this again with Evil Sons in a similar way, but basically, feral orcs are orcs that, like, by kind of circumstance, are primitive. Probably because they haven't got access to metal, or maybe their society hasn't developed enough, or they haven't faced enough opposition to really grow. But an orc tribe will often start off very primitive, and they'll use bows, they'll use arrows, and they'll use squigs. And squigs are kind of a wonder material, really. They fulfill the needs that orcs need. that orcs need. So when
many of them, yeah.
When orcs don't have tanks,
all of them.
When orcs don't have tanks, they'll have squig-offs that they hunt with, that they use. When they don't have bikes, they'll have boars. And like squigs more or less fulfill whatever orcs need them to do via resonance. And there's kind of limits on what that'll do, but like orcs are always impressed by something that's nasty and can kill them. And like feral orcs make use of these. They are stuck in kind of the old traditional mold of what is known as the old ways. Whereas Snakebites is kind of a romanticized idea of the old ways, of orcs that take the ideology that the best way to solve a new problem is to use an old solution. And they are traditionalists. They deliberately want to emulate things that feral orcs have forced on them. They want to use older stuff. They want to use older materials. They want to use squig-offs rather than tanks. They want to use to some extent.
So you're basically comparing Snakebites to those guys that like do reenactment battles and stuff like. I sort of see like you put it well. I kind of see like feral orcs that quite often, like you say, almost like a planet's been invaded at some point. And they've managed to fend off the orcs and that, but then the spores are there. And I kind of see feral orcs as kind of quite often what is emerging from them. And it's like the startings of like a small gathering of them. Eventually those feral orcs will end up growing and probably eventually become a more civilized orc society, if you can call it that. But yeah, Snakebites as well. I see them as they're tougher and grizzled, and they kind of see, like you say, they hold on to the old ways, and Snakebites would look at like Bad Moons with all the big flashy mega armor and stuff and be like, that's weak to be like hiding behind your armor. You should almost be there. Yeah, like almost,
they would tend to have a lot of artwork and tattoos as well, stuff like that. They were, like traditionally, they had a lot of like Aztec-y sort of style snakes and stuff like that.
They're keen on they're very much keen on the trial by ordeal. So like deliberately
being bitten by venomous snakes and stuff. Yeah. Old Zogwart is a famous ex-Snakebite character who became a freebooter.
I've got a theory as to why they're not so popular. I think it's because they kind of seem like fantasy orcs, and people are like, well, I'm in 40k, I want to play a space sci-fi game, so why do I want to play
probably why as well. That's
fantasy army.
I think they also like people, you're collecting the faction, you're looking at what sort of clan you want to collect and what you go for and what you specialize in, and almost like a clan who's saying, well, we kind of shun all that fancy stuff. It kind of might come across as almost like a little bit boring to people looking, but it's mistaken because
I think the way that the Codex now encourages the idea of a mixed tribe is kind of good, because I think people are going to sort of experiment with having like a small Snakebite bit in their army.
I think some models,
give them some guns.
I think it ties back into that point that you're on about the Codex is promoting it. I reckon if we got a plastic squig-off and we got rules for plastic ball boys, Snakebites will be a hell of a lot more popular.
Yeah, man. And they'd sell loads of those Sigmar orcs as well, wouldn't they?
Yeah, exactly. They just have to rebrand them or whatever, give them some cyborg.
And they are currently most probably, I would say, the weakest, or certainly one of the weaker clans in the Codex from a gameplay perspective as well.
And stuff,
although kind of undervalued by a lot of people, there is some good shit in there. Like fearless grots for one is a cool thing, but they've got some nice little tricks up their sleeve actually. But yeah, they've always been like a very close second to me, even though they're like so opposite to Bad Moons. But I just love the conversion possibilities out of them and the.
Oh, we're keeping you up, sir.
The cool ideas of things like that. I've always liked the idea with Snakebites and stuff of representing, using a lot of counts as of various things, sort of more high technology things, and representing them in a more slightly fantasy way, or a rigged up sort of way in that. But yeah, they're not against
Again,
using technology, are they? They're not against using a tank
they've
or
got
bike
Steam stuff. Technically,
whatever.
they've got in Epic they have the Steam Gargant, and the Steam Battle Wagon. They use a lot of Steam technology stuff.
If you wanted to do like I'm trying to do, like with my guys, sort of like my freebooters have got sort of a Mad Maxy sort of, well, I'm attempting to give them a Mad Max sort of feel, and you could easily do Snakebites with that sort of feel. You know, they don't have to be sort of jungle snakes and that sort of thing. It could be that they're just tribal orcs on the desert, you know, like, and you can do it. You can give them a different feel. You know, I'm going to try and do that. Show people, like, you know, different way of doing snake bites.
It's definitely if I was to add another clan to my army, it would be snake bites. I mean, I've got shitloads of slugger chopper boys that I don't really know what to do with, and the most likely thing that's going to happen with them is they'll be painted up as snake bites, and I'll have like a snake bite faction, or clan within my army.
Same way with Goffs as well. I think that's some hard boys.
Another clan we've got to talk about. Is that a segue there, Dread?
Well, there we go.
It was,
Go for it.
They smell.
Yeah.
Smelly Goffs, Goffs are the original orcs that you used to see in the Games Workshop stores back in the 90s, which we'll be talking about next episode.
There you go. Another segue. He's a segue king at the moment, look.
Well, actually, while we're at it, I'll tell you what, just before we talk about Goffs, why don't you, the viewers, tell us in the comments what tribe or clan you are doing with your orcs. So are you doing a clan-specific army, or are you actually having a mixed tribe? And tell us why.
Yeah, very cool. We'd like to know. We'd like to know. That'd be interesting reading.
So back to
Goff. You picked your clan. Tell us why you picked the clan that you've picked. Why it resonated with you? Because I think every orc player has that story. There's a reason why you play the clan you play. There is.
Exactly.
Goffs, no nonsense, aren't they? No mucking about, as they say.
But they still bother to paint checkers on things.
Yeah,
that's very time-consuming. As anyone that's tried to do it knows, that's a very time-consuming thing.
It's very time-consuming. But Goffs aren't the only ones who do checkers and dags and black and white, because that's something I picked up off of recently. Some people have that misconception as well. There's a lot of orc misconceptions, strangely. Some people seem to think that it's only Goffs that do checked and dags. It's like, no, all the clans do it to some degree or another. It's just that you're more likely to see it on Goffs because they, it's
about the only thing they do bother with.
Yeah, it's like black and white. You know what I mean?
Goffs, like most clans, I guess, see themselves. But they're kind of louder about it, probably. See themselves as
they're heavy metal.
Yeah, they're very, very heavy metal. They see themselves. They're like the purest orc. They're almost like Mordor orcs, taking the Lord of the Rings. They are no messing about. We don't bother with all the fancy gear. We don't bother racing around everywhere. We don't bother about stealing stuff, or they're just in for the fight. They love the fight itself. They live for the fight, not the loot that comes afterwards.
Running at the enemy, shouting, shooting them up. Goffs are kind of distrustful a little bit of vehicles. They like to have their feet on the ground generally. So that if you're likely to see like a big foot slugger mob, like of like a huge amount of orcs just running at you, it's probably Goffs. It's not necessarily the case, and Goffs will sometimes use transports and other things, as like Gaskell famously used a bunch of lander ships and teleporters when he was fighting the war on Armageddon. And it's no particular surprise that the Goffs would produce a kind of all-encompassing, all-or-nothing, like brutal warlord like Gaskell, who's there's some argument over whether he's our most successful warlord or not. But I mean,
certainly
he's
most
certainly
successful in recent years.
Yeah, he's certainly up there.
I think Goffs would be more likely as well to choose like an axe-style chopper that won't let them down over a chainsaw-type chopper, which could break. They'd be more up for the long-lasting, the enduring, no-nonsense type of weapon, you know?
I think probably just whatever's likely to cause the most horrendous
Pain.
damage and make them look dead hard, you know?
Yeah, big clubs, big brutal things like that, you know?
If it helps them get the job done, they'll like it. If it's designed to be flashy, you know, that's just going to be completely wasted on them.
Yeah, like you'll get Goff shooting, of course, but then that's not what they do so much. They're not going to, you know.
That's just something to do on the way in, isn't it?
Yeah.
They look to get stuck in. If ever there was the description of football hooligans in space fitting orcs, it's definitely the Goffs.
I think of them as the angriest of orcs as well, and like Gaz is famous for his bad temper, isn't he? Like he's never gone a day without a fight or killing something, you know. When there's not a battle on, like it says, even his own retinue of like most trusted knobs and that will steer clear of him and watch out. Don't mess with him today. Like he's in a foul mood. Like,
well, they tend to be called the bully boys, which says all you need to know about them.
Yeah.
And if they think he's too brutal to deal with, and like they're scared of his temper, can you imagine what they're like?
Yeah.
They're just mini versions of him, evidently. So should we talk about sons then? I think we've covered everything.
I think we talk about everybody else at this stage, isn't it?
So we might as well talk about the evil sons.
Maybe we'll just speed through them.
You beat you to it there, dude.
It's really a segue. Next time he'll be turning up on like a two-wheeled contrivance, just wheeling in front of the camera. But that was a pun. Yeah,
well, we ignored it. Go on.
Yeah. I didn't. Yeah. So probably the first misconception we should probably deal with. Oh, I say a misconception, but we should probably clarify what's the difference between speed freaks and evil sons. Are speed freaks all evil sons? Well, if there's a cult of speed, it's going to be, and there's a multi-clan war, then most, if not all, of the evil sons are probably in the cult of speed. But a cult of speed kind of transcends clan culture, and a cult of speed will look red. It doesn't matter whether it belongs to evil sons or not. All orcs except red ones go faster. And the cult of speed is about speed. So all the vehicles are going to be red. It doesn't matter what clan they belong to. Evil sons are a clan ideology that likes speed as well. And there's other things to evil sons as well. Principally, they like tinkering with vehicles. They like fiddling with them in much a similar way of bad means, but it's not necessarily about displaying wealth or going for the very best in a particular way. They're probably more interested in the fastest. And
can we tune it to get more juice out of it? Can we get an extra couple of miles an hour out of it?
Yeah, and maybe even jury-rigged. It might not necessarily be about it looking good, but performing better. But also the other thing to note is that cult of speeds tend to have a wide variety of vehicles. Evil sons tend towards bikes. It's not inexclusive, obviously, but evil sons particularly like bikes, and they like trucks as means of transports, less so battle wagons. But again, evil sons can have battle wagons. But evil sons are about speed and about technology and about getting around quickly.
Bikes are almost like a status symbol, aren't they, in evil sons? In the same way, like a good shooter is a status symbol of bad moons, or a good chopper of Goffs. And so, like the lowlier orc boys will be all bundled in the back of a truck just so they can have that sensation of speed and carry them in there. Whereas the ones that have kind of made it a bit more will be on their own bike or buggy or driving the truck, you know. And
evil sons definitely tend to have the most amount of mechs. So yeah.
I'd say the fastest is probably as important in that sort of clan as like as a status symbol as other clans would. Like who's the biggest and the artist, like
or the loudest.
Yeah, the artist, the loudest, but they're really like who's the fastest.
Yeah, and that's what they do, isn't it?
They'll compete. Yeah.
During times of peace, they will amuse themselves by just doing these horrendous like races, won't they? And they'll be entertaining the crowds, and they're probably one of the more when orcs get bored, when orcs get bored,
Evil Sons,
chaos and disruption happens, doesn't it? And the Warboss has a hard time keeping order. But Evil Sons are probably the best kept in that, just for entertainment, because
Pleasure
they're either
seeking. There you go.
Yeah, they're either competing in the races or they're being entertained by them in these like almost like Mario Kart-esque and Death Race 2000 kind of.
A lot of disposable youths.
Yeah.
or participating in Razes, which are like Orc Fun Fest. They've got like fast rides.
Just picture them lads. Just picture them lads in them little hatchbacks. They're doing like donuts in the
big boring
Tesco's car park.
McDonald's car park.
Yeah, that's the fellas. That's the Evil Sons.
The cruises.
Yeah.
Yeah, orcs kind of, they represent every kind of almost like bad bit of society, don't they? You've got the lager louts, the boy racers, the pimps.
Well, maybe that's deliberate.
Mercenary, yeah, definitely.
And the Snakebites being like the rednecks,
Welcome to Rick Priestley's sense of humour. It informs quite a lot of things. So I just, before we might have other specific things to talk about, but I just want to kind of get this point in at this point now that we've covered all of the clans, right? So all of what we've just said is true, but here's the thing about clans. Not all looters are Death Skulls. Not all mechs are Evil Sons. Like, everything about an orc society and what makes an orc society is effectively unique. And clans are just kind of a collections of ideals and preferences and prejudices, really. That's what they're for. And they're not a totality. It's like, if you've got like a trading culture within an orc society, it's not necessarily bad, mate. It probably is, but it's not necessarily the case. Any orc tribe doesn't need a clan in order to have particular specialists. It'll have those regardless. It's like when we talked earlier about like Death Skulls having more docks. They won't not have mechs. They'll have loads of mechs. Any orc society will have loads of mechs. It doesn't matter what clan it is. Orcs will always have more or less exactly what they need. And if they don't, the sparring system will produce it. Eventually, they will get what they need. Orcs are very resourceful and they're very, very individualistic. This is kind of the thing we're probably going to talk about more than anything else, not just in this video, but on this channel, is that orcs are so unique. They are the most unique faction in the entirety of all of 40k. And even when an orc belongs to a clan, how he belongs to that clan will be deeply individualistic. Like, if it's kind of hard to really, truly, properly represent it when you're painting all your models, but your average orc would be wearing clan colours, but not in the same way. Like, he probably might even have like a different dye, or he'll have like like the odd patch that'll have the colour on, and he might have other things about himself. You know, like each individual boy down to level will represent clans in the way that they desire to. Now, orcs aren't totally imaginative, so that there's kind of limits, but at the same time, orcs are reactor cultures. Like that's more or less how they work. They react to what happens around them, and that's more or less where I think clans come from. Clans are a way of orcs finding a way to making themselves stronger without having to rely on what they fight. And when one of the biggest things that pees me off about, like, just encountering people saying, "Oh, orcs are always in fighting," particularly like this thing of like orcs will lose because they'll be fighting each other before an enemy comes along. Part of the reason why orcs fight each other is that clans represent different ideologies of how you solve a problem. They're different ways of fighting. They're different ways of dealing with an issue, and
almost sounds like our society.
Yeah, exactly. And
the orcs, scary similarities.
Yeah, but the orcs will fight each other to decide which is best for their society, and that might change as the situation changes. But that's the thing. Orcs react. Orcs react to stimulus. What clans do is give orcs a way to develop stimulus without having to face anything other than more orcs. So orcs will always adapt and react whether they have anybody to react to or not. And I think that's the purpose that clans.
Very well said. You're on fucking fire today, mate.
Yeah, very well said, mate.
Get me on law. That's
we're trying to, mate. We're trying to.
So anyone that isn't subscribed to the Hobby Kit, better get over there.
Yeah, get over there because we're going to keep.
This guy knows what he's talking about.
We're going to keep badgering him to start churning out some lore videos and do these sort of discussions.
I'm probably going to have to.
For sure. Yeah, for sure. There's a wealth of knowledge there. But yeah, and like you so eloquently put there, but all orcs enjoy everything we've talked about in this episode about the various clans and what drives them and what their kind of specialization or love is. All orcs love that stuff. You know, a Goff will enjoy letting rip with his shooter, or he'll enjoy the sensation of going fast. But it's not like the most important thing in the world to him. But all orcs like all these things. Like Bad Moons love a good fight. There's not an orc alive that doesn't love a good fight. It doesn't matter, you know, that they love going fast or they love looting. That's not at the expense of that. And I think that's what a lot of players, they kind of sometimes make the mistake of treating orcs like other factions in that they really specialize and they're very strict and they stick to that one path. And that's not the case. Just because you're collecting a Blood Axe army doesn't mean you can't have loads of bikes in your army where people think, well, you go Evil Sons. No, there's no reason why you can't have loads of bikes in there and various things like that. And, you know, there's no reason why you can't do things like that. So it is very loose and there's always law reasons and your total freedom to create whatever type of army you want out of orcs.
They're the ultimate freedom army, aren't they, in a sense?
Oh, they really are in so many ways. We've talked endlessly about the conversion possibilities, but in terms of writing like a lore for your faction, there's so many places you can take it. It's endless. Yeah, it's endless.
So individual. It's like looking at each player and their Warboss or their big mech, and then you're going to like put some of what aspects of maybe your personality or persona that you have, you project that into that character. And then because leaders of orc armies or even just in society, you know what I mean, they have such an influence over what the army could be or what the tribe could be as well about them, you know what I mean. So you'll find what resonates with you in orc clans and orc culture and just run with it. Like there's no wrong way of doing things. I think you're hitting on something there, Stevo, where it's like, if you wanted to make a specific like Space Marine chapter or you wanted to do something, you're more constrained because it's like, oh well, you know, this type of unit should consist of this type of unit consists of that. With orcs, it's not like that. You can make it like that. If you want to do a Blood Axe army and have it super regimented and super organized, you can do that. But that's because the orcs have the flexibility to do what you want them to do. You know what I mean? You can be as creative and free with them as you want.
Yeah, if you want to do freebooters as all pirates on pirate ships, go for it. You know, that's you know, you've got that freedom. You can do that. Yeah. If you want to make an army of all grots, you can do that too. We haven't really touched on that yet, have we?
He's itching. We can't really finish this episode without touching on grot mobs.
Yeah, because we've talked about orcs, and that means we've sold this faction cheaply because we haven't talked about the best orcoid yet.
The original. I was here first.
They're more resourceful. They're just better, and you know, they can rebel. They can become bandits. I'd love to have a Gretchen Bandit army. That would be quite fun. And they're all like, they actually are lucky. They don't have to paint themselves blue. They're already lucky because they're grots. Yeah,
got better eyesight. But unfortunately for them, they've got a better sense of smell.
Yeah, and that's another thing.
Hearing.
Like, in terms
would
of
love
like
a pet grot. He would literally love a pet grot. If only they had them at the pet shop, eh?
Well, I mean, they're not that far from cats. I think they're not really that far from cats. Sort of like if you mush together, kind of like the kind of temperamental, but quite deranged kind of personality of a cat, and then gave it all of that desire for affection that a dog has. you've basically got a Grot.
Create the ultimate pet, the ultimate annoying pet.
Yeah, but that's more or less what they are.
It does everything for you, though. Yeah. Fairly handy. All you have to do is kick it about.
Oh, that's one thing I wanted to mention.
You meant Grots, not your cats. Grots, all right?
yeah. Or your dog.
But yeah, it is nice. That's one of the few things I like about the new modern codexes is that they're dropping mentions to Rebel Grots, making sure that it's not just one particular planet. But before we go, we probably are going. I don't know, but before we sort of sign off, there's one more thing I wanted to mention before we go, and that's the concept of the Splinter Clan, which I think is probably worth mentioning. Now, this is an old Rogue Trader thing. It's not been mentioned much since, really. I do think we've got an example. I think we've got a working example, and I've already mentioned it before. And this might be useful to people when they're making their own lore and making their own fluff for their own particular clans. Because this is more or less kind of what we've been talking about earlier about why clans are useful. And obviously, clans are there to try and figure out what works. And when an orc society is confronted by a situation where no clan of any particular kind can work with the situations they've got, there's almost like a hard reset, and the clans kind of disappear from the orc culture. And this is described in the Rogue Trader fluff as the formulation of the Splinter Clan. It's mentioned very briefly towards the end of War of the Orcs, the first proper orc lore book, and probably only proper orc lore book. And Gorkamorka is probably an instance of the formulation of a Splinter Clan, because you've kind of got this infighting between the orcs, which kind of resolves with the mechs taking over, which is unthought of. And you've got all of these things, and this whole idea of the orcs kind of wanting to build a huge teleporter, teleport themselves out of this barren, useless world. And this is kind of a new solution. So they've kind of formulated a kind of new clan around the idea of what they think will solve the problem and get them back to warring again. And that's kind of just demonstrating the inherent flexible nature of orcs. Orcs have a very flexible attitude when it comes to, they will see a problem and they will just keep trying until they find a solution. And they won't be discouraged. They may change how they view a situation. They may all get killed. But orcs will keep at a problem until they find a solution. And I think that's what clans are ultimately there to do. And the reason we've got the big six is because those things are quite good at solving a lot of problems. And we can tell that because we've got the brutal Goffs, we've got the sneaky Death Skulls and the even sneakier Blood Axes. We've got, if in doubt, the old ways work from the Snakebite. We've got, if in doubt, go at it really quick with the evil sons, and if in doubt, throw money at it from the Bad Moons. And all of those solutions can kind of work. Or if in doubt, take someone else's money. It's like that every solution's kind of there and kind of present and correct. And all orcs are really interested in is ultimately results. They will respect results. They will respect something that can fight. And that's kind of what clans are there to do. Clans are there to give orcs a sort of heraldry that they can use and an approach to a problem. And if it don't work, find another one.
It's funny as well, you're talking about like splinter clans. Now, obviously, now GW have sort of touched on that again. We've now got like the subcultures and stuff to help represent those sort of further things and that, which is great for people can use those rules and things to represent a clan of their own making, sort of thing.
We should actually do a video about the subcultures, shouldn't we? Really, at some point as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, the subcultures are very cool. Actually, I like what they've brought in. They've been doing some.
It's just one. It's
been doing
Grot
some good
mobs.
stuff. Grot mobs is definitely the popular one. But
we could explore where they could be taken further in future and stuff like that.
But yeah, I think we've covered everything there pretty extensively, haven't we?
I think so.
Pretty much.
I mean, if we haven't, guys, if we've missed anything out, I mean, if we cover absolutely everything in terms of lore and history and gameplay and collecting and converting, it'll be like a 10-hour video. Easy. So if we have missed anything or whatever, please share it in the comments below. Anything else you want to add to this discussion, or share some love for various clans or subcultures or grot mobs or freebooters. But yeah, I think we can probably close it out there, guys. Yeah.
So what we doing next time?
Yeah. Bash the like button. Make sure you're subscribed.
Bells.
Subscribe to all the other gits. I know there's mostly just my fans here, but these guys, they've got channels too. So, give them some love too.
Subscribe.
This one here thinks he's massive. Have you seen his latest video? Oh, look at me, I'm so big.
Kind of a big deal,
Big deal. Big deal.
But yeah.
Got the messages and all my friends at work subscribe.
Send me review copies.
Yeah, you're listening. So you thrown me off now. I don't know what I was going to say.
So we're going to wrap it up.
And
what
I pulled
do we
me
plan on
earplug out, so
talking
now I
about
can't
next
even hear you.
episode? Look, he's got the earphones out. He's chatting. We're wrapping it up. What are we going to be talking about in the next episode that people can look
Next episode, we are going to be going down a bit of nostalgia, talking about gaming store / hobby club memories. And so a lot of us and you guys out there will have been members of gaming clubs or played in GW stores or whatever. And we're going to chat about our experiences, good and bad, in those environments.
Good,
and our
the
memories.
bad, the ugly.
A little trip down nostalgia.
And even
lane.
a little bit of maybe even a chat about how they've sort of come and gone as well. Because they was more prevalent in the past. We'll talk about that as well.
Yeah, and talk about how it's sort of different in different countries and things.
Very much so. I'm in Ireland now, and I can feel Scar's pain like not much here.
Reg, you realise we're plugging that next episode. We're not filming it now.
Oh, yeah. Right.
Reel him in.
All right. So until next time, that's goodbye from Scar. Don't forget to drill your barrels.
It's 6+ Stevo signing out.
Hobby Git. Grot's are best. Facts.
And see you later, gits. Enough said.
Bye.